Let's get started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Balázs Heller. I'm the Managing Director of Mind, Body, Spirit Coaching, and I have a group of Mind, Body, Spirit for the purpose of giving seminars about what I really promote, which is nothing else but the holistic approach of life. And I'm working as a life coach, a personal fitness trainer, yoga and salsa teacher. So I try to promote a holistic life of the mind, body and spirit throughout my own work, and also throughout my seminars, where I invite several interesting speakers. Tonight I have a very interesting person. His name is Tino Curione, and he's going to talk to you about the 7 elements of optimal wellness. He is an intuitive energy healer and also optimal wellness coach, and he is the director of Optimal Wellness Ireland.
It's the 16th of December, and I'm not looking forward to Christmas. I'm definitely not looking forward to the New Year. I'm depressed, suicidal, stressed out, and I don't know what has happened to my life or what I'm going to do with my life. And the year is 1999. 10 years ago, I was sitting in a prison cell in New Jersey's Northern State Prison System. And I was in a maximum security control unit for violent gang members because I was in a violent gang known as the Latin Kings. And at that point in my life, it's easy to see how I may have felt that I hit the very bottom. I hit a real crisis point because I found myself in a control unit where you spent about 48 hours in your cell. And you ate there, you slept there, you did everything there. And every 2 days they would let me go outside into a cage. And in that cage I'd get some fresh air. And then when I come back in I can get a shower. But then I'd go back in for another 2 days. What that literally became for me was the feeling of being inside of a grave. Like I had literally buried myself. I had literally put myself in a grave to all of the different decisions that I had made throughout my life. And when I woke up and realized that, I realized one very important thing, and that was that I had to make a decision. Do I continue on like this, or do I make some kind of change? Now at that point I had been in prison for 5 years already. It had been 5 years at that point. So you might be thinking, you might be wondering, well, why didn't this question come sooner? It'd be a lot nicer if you start grappling with these questions at a time before the crisis starts to extend out very long. Something happened that really triggered something for me that I had to really look at my situation. I had to really look at myself. One of the gang members who was in my gang, we would call each other brothers, so one of my fellow brothers, he was going home. Now this is a very exciting time for everyone, because when you're locked up all the time, after a while, you start realizing, man, I can't get out of here even if I wanted to. I can't determine when I'm going to eat. They determine that. When they're going to open the door. So what you start getting thoughts sometimes like, what if the day comes where it's time for me to go home and they just decide they don't want to let me out? What can I do? I couldn't get out. So when you would see someone else go home, it would be like a celebration. Now his name was King Dragon, and obviously I'm never going to forget him for the rest of my life. I forgot everyone else pretty much. But him in particular I will never forget because of the impact that his going home had on me. He had been in for 10 years. Twice the amount of time that I had been in up to that point. So we were really excited that he was going home. And so we watched him go home, we watched out of our windows, and he was happy, and we were all celebrating, and he was passing all his things out, and he goes. Next day, we're right back into our life. That celebration doesn't last long. We get back into the reality of the world in which we realize we're not getting out. 3 months later, 3 months, somebody comes walking by my door, one of my other fellow gang member brothers, and says, Do you remember King Dragon? I said, of course I remember King Dragon. Well, he's back. I said, that's not possible. How can 3 months? He just spent 10 years in prison, and he's home for 3 months, and he's back. And the guy said to me, yeah, what's the big deal? I just left it at that. I was quiet for a while, and I just kept thinking about this, just kept thinking, there's no way, this can't be. So the next opportunity that I had to go out into the yard for recreation, I was asking all of my brothers, how can this be? I don't understand. This is confusing to me. He just is 3 months. And they kept looking at me in a strange way and saying, why are you asking this? Don't you know? Don't you realize? Don't I realize what? What am I not realizing? That's why I'm asking you all these questions. Don't you realize that this is our way of life? And I had never thought about that. My immediate response was to reject that, say, this is not my way of life. What do you mean this is our way of life? That I'm going to spend all this time here and then I'm going to go home and then I'm going to come back after a couple of months? That's not my way of life. And they laughed at me. They laughed and they thought I was joking and being humorous. And I kept insisting, no. And then they got really serious with me. And they said, wait, you seem to be taking this a little bit too personally. What are you going to do when you go home? Seriously, what are you going to do when you go home? You're going to get a job? You're going to be a good citizen? What do you think we do? This is what we do. And I had to sit with that quietly, and I went back to my cell, and going back for another 2 days by myself to think this over. And when I did think it over, I kept thinking about that question, what are you going to do when you go home? And the more I thought about it, the more I kept ending with the answer, I'm not going to get caught this time. And that's what everyone else thinks as well too. And when I realized that I had no plans of going home and doing anything constructive other than taking everything, because you have to understand something about prison. I call it the University of Criminology. You learn everything. You learn how not to get caught because you learn how everyone else got caught. When you meet people, the first story you share is, what happened? How'd you get in here? How'd you get caught? What would you do better next time? So by the end of that time, you may go in for stealing a piece of candy, and you come out and you know how to sell drugs, you know how to steal cars, you know how to pawn them off, you know how to break into houses, terrorize people, you know how to do everything by the end of it. But the one thing you always think of is, how will I do this without getting caught so that I don't have to come back here? Now the downside is, when you survive something like that, it's less of an incentive not to come back. I don't agree with the idea of putting people in prison and you just leave them there as a punishment. Because if they survive that, and mind you, some people don't, but the vast majority of people, they do survive it. The next time they go face to face with a crime and someone says, oh, you might end up in prison. So, I've already done that, and I survived it. And when you compare working at McDonald's to getting a couple thousand a week from crime, and the incentive kind of goes away, the fear kind of goes away. So when I realized that this was my thinking and that I wasn't going home to do anything constructive with my life, that I was going to go home and hope to be lucky, that's when my crisis point really landed on me, because I did not want to do that. I had no other plan. I had nothing else that I had as an alternative. This was it. They were right, and I had to admit it to myself. And when I did that, let's just say I got even more depressed, because I didn't have an alternative. And in that depression, I thought to myself, I'd rather die. I'd rather die than to go home, have no life, and come back into this situation again. And not only that, when I looked in the mirror, I hated the person that I saw. And I mean, I really hated and despised the person that I saw. And I used to think to myself, if there's one last good thing that I can do before I die, I'll get rid of this person. And that's where the suicidal thinking went even more. But with that thinking, I also thought to myself, wait a minute. If I'm ready to end my life at my own hands, What if I were to choose the other side? Now this is element 1. It's a bit graphic, but it is a starting point for me, because my first element, and these are elements that I present not as step 1, step 2, step 3, and this is how you're going to get to this point, but these are things that you should consider if you're thinking about optimal wellness, if you're thinking about making decisions and changes in your life, that these are different pieces that may apply to where you might find yourself now. Element 1 for me is determine where you are and where you would like to be. I determined where I was in that point. And this is a very important element. It seems very small and minuscule because when you think of diet, there's so much to learn, so many books to read, and you think of nutrition and exercise, it's just libraries of information out there. But taking inventory of your life, determining where you are now, and determining if that is where you really want to be. Now, the obvious answer for me was, no, I don't want to be in this situation, nor do I want to continue with this so-called way of life that we have all unconsciously and unknowingly accepted. And so at that point of determining where I was and where I wanted to be, I was fortunate to make the decision that I wanted to live. Because I created a balance in which I said, if I'm willing to go to the opposite extreme of choosing death as an option to stop this way of life that I was living, then if I want to choose anything other than that, then I want to go to the opposite extreme. Meaning I either choose life or death. And if I choose death, that's completely negative. If I choose life, then that's completely positive, and I want to associate with the extreme of that. And that's probably what makes me the way that I am today. A lot of people say that I'm extreme about my way of life. It's extreme for them because they don't do it. It's not extreme for me because it's become normal for me. But this is one of the things that I had determined, that I wanted the extreme opposite of the other choice that I was thinking of making. When I made that choice, I didn't know what to do other than make that choice. I didn't know how I was going to have a positive life. I couldn't ask the guards. I couldn't ask my fellow inmates. There was no one there. There's no counseling, there's no healers, there's no therapists, there's no one that you can really call on and say, look, I made this decision. Because day after day you have to adapt within that environment, and you have to recognize that it's a negative environment, and so there's certain things you have to do for survival. So nobody really knows anything about positive living or positive life. But I was determined that I wasn't going to continue to live that way. So I knew I had to make a choice. I couldn't just say, all right, fine, I'm making this decision. I had to be active in that choice. So I thought to myself, even within my ignorance, what's one thing that I'm doing that I know is wrong? I might not know anything about positivity or coaching or anything like that, but I know that smoking cigarettes is bad. Everybody wants to try to quit. Nobody succeeds at it. Everybody knows it's bad. Nobody thinks it's nutritious. All of us commonly know. That was something that we collectively knew. In fact, we probably took joy in the fact that it was bad. We probably thought we were badder because we were doing it. I started smoking when I was young, and we all started smoking. When I was young, me and my friends, we smoked because it was a bad thing to do. So I knew it was bad. So I thought to myself, this is something that I can do. And this is very important too, because when you make decisions in life, pick something that you can do. Don't go for these gigantic goals which are going to crush your self-esteem if you don't accomplish it. Pick something that you can actually do, even if you think to yourself, well, that's easy. That's the point of it. You have to accomplish something in order to get a sense of self-esteem. Do small things, pat yourself on the back until you get used to having the sense of accomplishment, then take on something a little bit bigger. So I thought to myself, smoking. Now, smoking for a lot of people is a big thing, but you have to remember, in my situation, it was the only thing. So I don't coach people on how to quit smoking. I don't help people quit smoking. No one will ever be in the situation that I was in for me to be able to suggest to them how to quit smoking. So it was a life or death situation for me because I had no other thing that I could do. This was the only thing that I knew was a positive thing to do. So I put a lot of force in it. I put a lot of will in it. It meant a lot to me. So when you choose the things in life that you want to do, Choose the ones that really mean a lot to you, because you'll put more energy into it. So I quit. I knocked on the wall, and I told the guy, and I grabbed all my cigarettes, and I told the guy next door, "Do you want my cigarettes?" This was about midnight. He was like, "You woke me up to ask me if I want your cigarettes? If you're joking, I'm going to kill you the next time I see you." I said, "Listen, I'm not joking, and I'm not going to ask you again. Do you want them or not?" "Of course I want your cigarettes." So I passed them over. We had these little holes you can kind of reach over to the other side. So I just passed him all of my cigarettes and everything. He was like, and when he got him, he was like, you know I'm not going to give them back to you, right?" I said, "No, I realize you're not going to give them back to me." I said, "Okay." So that was it. I stopped. You know what? I felt really good. I felt really good about that. I didn't even go to sleep. I sat up in my bed and I just realized, my God, I made a good choice here. And I'm going to stick with this choice. And it felt really good, and that's why I emphasize, when you want to build up self-esteem in life, pick small things that you know you can do and that you really want to do. Do them and then sit with it. Sit with it. Sit with the feeling of, wow, that feels good, I accomplished that. And there was another very important lesson that I learned in that moment. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't announce to anyone, "I'm going to quit." When you make major decisions in life, it is very important you keep them to yourself. A lot of times other people will throw doubt into why are you doing that? Why do you want to, or are you sure, or I don't know it. Don't tell people about something that you are trying to accomplish until you accomplish it. Now you can ask people. You can not let them in on your plans. You have your own plan. It's your responsibility. When you take action on something in life, it's your responsibility, not anyone else's. So you can ask people for help, but don't tell them about your plans. Just do what you're doing. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't, and you know what? Apart from the guy next to me, no one really even noticed. It took about a week, 2 weeks. People started saying, "Are you not smoking?" "Well, since when?" "Well, about 2 weeks ago I stopped." "What do you mean you stopped?" At that point, you see how the negativity automatically comes in? That's what they would have said the first day if I would have said to them, "Listen, I'm thinking about that." What do you mean? 2 weeks later, I had my personal strength, my personal sense of accomplishment, so that when they were saying, "What do you mean? Oh, it must be hard." I know it's fine. It's been 2 weeks. I'm doing fine. So make your goals personal, private, and it is your responsibility. Pick a barrier in your life, and you have to surpass it, overcome it by yourself. You can ask for other people's help, but I encourage you not to share it with other people. Unless you absolutely know that the people or the person in your life has had a record of being extremely supportive of your decisions. Then I would say yes, because then you're going to get some positive reinforcement. But ideally, you really want to learn how to do these things on your own, because you don't want to become dependent even on a supportive person. Make your own goal. Determine where you are, where you'd like to be. Take a plan of action. Take small steps, and keep it to yourself. Share your accomplishments after you accomplish them.